Hello everyone, very good morning and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. Based on popular demand, starting from today, we will ensure more PIB integration into the daily Hindu news analysis, and you must have seen this on the thumbnail as well. So today, I'll be taking up around 8 important articles from the Delhi edition of the Hindu, and for each article, wherever possible, wherever it is relevant, we will include a PIB linkage so that we go beyond the article and cover all the important facts related to the topic. And apart from that, at the end, I'll be discussing at least a few PIB articles that are relevant for prelims and mains examination so that this session becomes a one-stop solution for your current affairs problems. The idea is to ensure that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. So if you like this initiative of including PIB coverage regularly, not just some PIB articles, but integrating it with each and every topic. If you like that, do support us with your comments and let us know what you think about it. Now, before we start, I have a couple of important announcements. Those of you who are preparing for 2027 and beyond, if you're looking for a guided program, we have recently launched the Elevate batch on the 1st of June, where you can attend 2 live lectures per day so that you can quickly cover the syllabus and you will also have enough time to focus on your practice and revision. So this would be the right time to enroll as Unacademy is providing a discounted price and the subscription is available at just 19,999 along with up to 6 months of free extension. This will give you access to the live and recorded lectures along with the study material, the test series and mentorship sessions as well. So those interested, please check out the details by clicking on the link. But on the subscription page, you might see a different fee. So to avail the offer, you have to enter the code IAS English. And this is a limited period offer. And for those of you who are preparing for 2026 mains or any aspirant preparing for answer writing practice, we are launching Conquer Mains 2026 program, under which you will have dedicated classes covering the static portion and the current affairs required for the upcoming mains exam by our top educators. Plus, we will have dedicated live answer writing practice sessions. And some of these classes will be taken by toppers of last year's CSE exam. Plus, you will also get the mains test series program with evaluation of your answer copies within 48 hours, along with the required notes and study material. So if interested, please enroll for this at 9,999 and the link is provided in the description box below. With this, let's get started and look at the first topic. On page number 10, there is a very important article related to economy, science and technology, and as well as international relations. This article is mainly focused on India's semiconductor manufacturing capabilities. It helps us understand where does India position itself in the semiconductor value chain. Currently, what is our import dependency and how do we become a little more self-reliant in this critical technological domain. Now, the reason why the topic is in news is because recently the Niti Aayog and its Frontier Tech Hub has brought out a very important report. You can see the PIB article that I have attached over here so that you have the right context. Within Niti Aayog, there is a action tank, like a think tank, which has been set up to focus on frontier technologies, be it artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, etc., to ensure that by 2047, by the time we achieve the goal of a Viksit Bharat, we need to prioritize frontier technologies and to create the right support base for these frontier technologies. So this initiative is referred to as Niti Aayog's Frontier Tech Hub. So it has recently published a report on the 29th of May, as you can see in this PIB article. So this Hindu article is based on this. This report that was published by the Frontier Tech Hub of Niti Aayog is titled Future of India's Semiconductor Industry. It's a roadmap for the future of India's semiconductor fabrication and manufacturing capabilities. Now, this report has highlighted two important challenges for India. The report recognizes the lack of India's domestic self-reliant capabilities. It identifies India's current import dependency as well. And it flags two important concerns. One, we will face multiple challenges when it comes to developing domestic semiconductor manufacturing capabilities. From the required capital to technology to the manpower, we will face multiple hurdles and multiple challenges which are identified in this report. But the report also says that irrespective of all these challenges, obstacles, and hurdles, we still have to pursue this objective regardless. We have to ensure that in the coming decade, by 2035, at least to some extent, India should become self-reliant as much as possible in the field of semiconductor manufacturing. Because this is not just an economic priority, it is a national security and geopolitical priority. So first, before we start the discussion, let us talk about Niti Frontier Tech Hub. This can itself come as a prelims question. There could be a statement-based question on the Frontier Tech Hub of Niti Aayog. What does it do? What is its purpose? Who are the stakeholders in this Frontier Tech Hub? What are the focus areas? That is something you need to note down for your prelims examination. So, as I said, it is an action tank, like a think tank, functioning within the Niti Aayog to help India achieve the goal of Viksit Bharat. It focuses on the mega technology shifts, the paradigm shifts in the technology domain which are coming up, be it artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, etc. And it anticipates the challenges that will emerge for India. The lack of capabilities, the lack of resources, or what should be the roadmap for our private industry? What should the government do? What kind of policy support can the government provide? So this is the mandate of the Frontier Tech Hub, and it's essentially a platform where more than 100 experts in the field of frontier tech are brought together from across different domains. There are experts drawn from the government, experts drawn from private industry, from academia and the research and development domain as well. So their goal is to chart a 10-year roadmap and prepare India by 2035 to achieve a degree of self-reliance in these frontier technologies. So if you have understood this basic fact, now let's focus on the article and go beyond the article as well to see where India stands in terms of semiconductor manufacturing according to this report by the Frontier Tech Hub of Niti Aayog. See, right now, India does not have even one fully operational semiconductor fabrication unit. Right now, we have a near 100% dependency. We are sourcing semiconductor chips from multiple sources, multiple countries, be it from China, be it from Taiwan, and especially from one major company in Taiwan, the TSMC, which is a global leader in semiconductor chips. Then as well as from US, Japan, South Korea as well. And by the way, these four countries, which are partner countries, trusted allies, they're also part of a semiconductor alliance known as the Fab 4 Alliance, also known as the Chip 4 Alliance. We also source from the European market as well, but these are the primary suppliers. Now, the report implicitly recognizes that sourcing semiconductor chips from China can be a security threat, given that China is an adversary. Since China is well known to weaponize its economic and geo-economic advantages and use it for geopolitical strategic gains, the report clearly recognizes, not explicitly but implicitly, it implies that China should be considered as a risky source nation. But problem is with, let's say, Taiwan. If we have over dependency on one company such as TSMC, a disaster in Taiwan could wreck our supply chains. Let's say tomorrow China were to attack Taiwan, or Taiwan is very prone to disasters from earthquakes to cyclones. And these disasters can completely upend the entire supply chain, which poses a big risk for Indian economy. And depending more and more on foreign suppliers will always be a risk factor, creating a vulnerability in your supply chain. So that is what the report recognizes. As of now, we do not have even one semiconductor fabrication unit in the country. That is what India is looking to change. Right now, our first semiconductor fab unit is coming up in Dholera, Gujarat. Please make a note of this fact, very important for prelims. Parallelly, 10 more semiconductor units are coming up. They are in various stages of development. So hopefully by the end of the decade, we should have some of these facilities up and running. They are all supported under the India Semiconductor Mission, which is a flagship mission implemented by Ministry of Electronics and IT. Under India Semiconductor Mission, a corpus of 76,000 crores has been created, a corpus of close to $7 to $8 billion, where the government is providing capital support to the semiconductor fabricating units in the country. The government is providing subsidies, land concessions, production linked incentive. All such support is being provided through the India Semiconductor Mission. It's a specialized autonomous business division under Digital India Corporation that functions under Ministry of Electronics and IT. See, as of today, our semiconductor market is estimated in the range of 45 to 50 billion dollars, right? So domestically, that is the scale of investments which is going into the sector. Though we don't have a functional semiconductor fab unit today, in the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to change. By 2035, we will see a significant improvement. By the end of the decade, the market is expected to double, and India will have to bring in investments worth at least 50 to 60 billion dollars over the next 10 years. This is what is expected from the government as part of the policy support under India Semiconductor Mission. And please note that the government is rolling out the second edition of India Semiconductor Mission. Very soon, the Ministry of Electronics and IT will be bringing out the second phase of India Semiconductor Mission, where private semiconductor units will get up to 50% fiscal support in the form of tax incentives or concessional loan, concessional land. And many state governments also have complementing policies that aligns with the goals of the central government. So under this ambitious mission, India has set a goal that by 2029, at least 70 to 75% of the chips that are used in domestic applications, they should be produced within the country. It is an ambitious goal, but at least it is achievable with the right interventions. India would like to emerge as one of the top semiconductor nations globally and pioneer frontier chip production in the 3 to 2 nanometer range, which have strategic applications in aerospace, in defense, etc. So this is the roadmap that India is looking at. Now, when you look at the dependency that we have, as I said, any form of import dependency not only creates an economic vulnerability, it can also create a national security vulnerability. And don't think it is just from China. China is well known to coerce its companies and install security backdoors in the equipment, which can later be used by Chinese intelligence to hack into networks. If you look at China's telecom sector, Chinese telecom giants like Huawei, ZTE, which have global dominance in switching equipment, reportedly they have been forced by Chinese intelligence to install security backdoors, and today their equipment makes up the backbone of your 2G, 3G, and 4G networks, not just in India, but across the world. So this enables Chinese cyber espionage, cyber warfare attempts. That's one reason why Chinese companies like Huawei have been banned in 5G networks across the world, in most countries, in US, in Europe. Even India has been very hesitant to get involved with Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE. So the same can be expected in the domain of semiconductor chips as well, where deliberate vulnerabilities might be created. Deliberate weaknesses might be built into the system that could allow Chinese security agencies to hack into our networks. And this represents a major national security risk. And this can come not just from China, even a country like US or any other foreign supplier will always present a national security risk. Even American intelligence agencies are known to spy on their friends and partners as well. The US government and its intelligence agencies are known to force US tech companies to install security backdoors so that US agencies can hack into networks and spy on target countries or launch cyber warfare against target countries. And this need not just be against enemies, it could even be against friendly partners and allies as well. So, any form of foreign dependency in critical technologies, in frontier technologies, is extremely hazardous, not just for your economy, but for national security as well. Because, see, this exposes your key industries to a big geopolitical risk and geopolitical uncertainties. You take the Iran war, for example. Look at the kind of disruption it has caused, not just to oil and gas, but various other key commodities. There is a supply shortage, the prices have shot up, and this places a big burden on your economy as well. It disrupts the supply chain, disrupts the manufacturing cycle itself. And parallelly, we have the national security risk. So, achieving self reliance in these critical sectors is non negotiable in today's world. If you have to emerge as a leading power, a global power, achieving self reliance in key sectors is absolutely non negotiable. But however, there is a big challenge here, which is identified by the report of the Niti Aayog as well. Setting up a fab unit, setting up the entire supply chain of semiconductor chips, it has a very long gestation period. Even if you have all the money, you can't set up a plant and start operating it within few months or within few years. It will take at least a few years, in the range of 5 to 10 years, to operationalize a semiconductor plant. Now, in the entire supply chain, you have different specializations like semiconductor fabrication, semiconductor testing, semiconductor packaging. These are all different specialized domains within the semiconductor industry. Now, to establish the entire value chain in the country, you will minimum require 20 to 30 years. Because, see, first of all, setting up the units are not just expensive. The overall process in the life cycle is time consuming. And please understand that you require the right manpower, the right talent. And right now we have a shortage of the required talent. You need considerable investments in research and development, especially to pioneer semiconductor design. This itself will take several years of effort, and we are way behind the curve compared to other countries. And in the entire supply chain, you need a lot of complex machinery. You need a lot of components, which we don't produce domestically right now. So we have to depend on foreign vendors and suppliers to procure at least 50 of these specialized equipments that are necessary. And that again creates a vulnerability. And it also leads to delays in procurement. So Indian OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, even if they get 100% funding from the government, 100% support from the government, even then it will take several years, minimum 5 to 10 years to set up and run a plant. And imagine this across the value chain, from fabrication to testing to packaging. We not only need a lot of foreign machinery and equipment, we need the required talent and the skilled manpower and the research and development in the field of design. This is a very, very complex exercise, and the gestation period is very, very long. So what China has achieved or Taiwan has achieved, they didn't achieve it in 5-10 years. They have achieved it over 30 to 40 years. So right now, what can India do? Can we just sit and complain? Can we just sit and look at the challenges? Or do we find a way forward? The way forward is to first step up the investments. That's exactly what the government of India is trying to do through the India Semiconductor Mission. So under the second edition, there would be a substantial corpus of money in the range of $45 to $60 billion in the next 10 years that will be invested by the government itself. This is a massive amount of money. This will be used to incentivize and subsidize the original equipment manufacturers. so that they can set up the plants, procure the machinery which is required, and focus on at least some key domains. See, we don't have to master the whole value chain right away. It's not practical, it's not feasible as well. At least in some strategically relevant domains. So, some fabrication of frontier chips in the range of 3 to 7 nanometers, which is currently the global cutting edge in semiconductor chips. Setting up the basic testing and packaging facilities. Focusing on long-term research and development for semiconductor chip design. We can prioritize some of the segments in the entire value chain, invest the money over there, and give the required policy push so that we can at least build a degree of self-reliance in strategic sectors, especially for aerospace, defense, and critical infrastructure. So, for the coming decades, we will continue to have some import dependency. You can't end this overnight. But gradually, incrementally, we can reduce the vulnerability, we can reduce the risk that we are facing, the supply chain risk and the geopolitical national security risk. So until then, until we build up our domestic capabilities, the report is recommending that we should rely only on trusted partners. This is where the report implies that China can be a threat. Though India-China relations are improving in the last 2 years, it implicitly states that China can be an adversary. We should, as much as possible, reduce procurement of chips from China. Even other countries may not be entirely trusted or reliable, especially the US. But we do have certain partners like Japan, European Union, South Korea, and it explains India's recent deals and agreements with some of these countries. If you look at the recent visit of South Korean president to India, there was a specific deal on semiconductor cooperation. Recently, India has signed similar deals with Singapore, which is another major semiconductor manufacturing country. When PM Modi visited Singapore a few months ago, a dedicated deal was signed. Then recently, when PM Modi visited Europe, India has signed a major deal with Netherlands, which is a key semiconductor manufacturing country. And there is one Dutch company, the ASML, which is the only company with the lithography machines that are needed to manufacture GPUs, graphic processing units, which are the backbone of your AI data centers. So India is tying up with trusted partners. We have a similar arrangement with Israel, where in strategic sectors, Israeli chips can be included in the Indian manufacturing process. So for some time, India will have to rely on trusted partners and eventually establish this functional chain, at least to address the immediate needs and requirements to reduce our overall vulnerability. So based on what we have discussed, please take up this mains practice question and practice your answer writing. I've covered the topic holistically, giving you the required facts, data, and analysis. All you have to do is take the same structure and build a good introduction, a body, and conclude the answer. So let's see how many of you can make use of this. Now let's move to the next article. On page 10, there is a very similar article focused on India's EV manufacturing capabilities and EV supply chain. If frontier technology covers AI and other emerging critical sectors, then EV also falls into that bracket because electric vehicles will help you transition away from fossil fuel based transportation and ensure that your transport sector becomes clean, becomes sustainable. So EV transition is a national priority. It's a global priority as well, mainly to tackle climate change, to bring down emissions, and also to achieve a level of energy independence. If the transport sector can make a major shift towards EV or electric vehicles, it will automatically reduce your dependency on oil and gas imports. And this is critical for a country like India. Now, one reason why a country like China has not faced much of the brunt of the Iran war and the blockade of Hormuz is because in the Chinese automobile market, there has been a paradigm shift where not just the producers, the automobile manufacturers, but even the consumers have made a huge shift towards adoption of electric vehicles, from cars to buses to trucks to even two-wheelers. And they have set up the required charging infrastructure as well. Now, India faces a higher degree of vulnerability with regard to blockade of Hormuz because we still have a critical dependency on oil and gas supplies. Now, that is the problem India is trying to fix, and there are some positive signs. Over the last decade, the government of India has given a very active push for adoption of electric vehicles in the country through the FAME India mission. And the state governments also are complementing the center in this regard by providing incentives to consumers to increase EV adoption. They are providing tax holidays with regard to road tax. They are giving rebates or subsidies, right? And automobile manufacturers as well are being incentivized by the government. So there is a demand side intervention and a supply side intervention as well to increase the production of EV and promote the adoption of EV as well. And slowly and gradually, the charging infrastructure is also picking up. And the data for the last fiscal year is quite promising. In the last fiscal, we have adopted 2.5 million electric vehicles on our roads. Now, this number will have to increase exponentially in the coming years and decades. So, what should India do? What kind of policy support is necessary from center and states to drive this EV transition in our transport sector? Because, see, right now, in the EV industry, the critical technology here is the battery technology, right? Now, if you look at the chemistry composition of the battery, it's primarily lithium-ion batteries which are preferred, and different variants of lithium-ion batteries. But this again creates a critical dependency. Because these critical strategic minerals are not available in sufficient quantity with India as of now. Most of the supply chains are monopolized by China and China-controlled companies and mines and processing and refining centers. Even battery technology is something which has not become very mature in India, and we do have an import dependency here. So we are depending on battery imports as well, right? And even to, let's say, produce batteries domestically in India, we have to depend on imports for the critical strategic minerals, particularly lithium, nickel, cobalt, and copper. Now, this will enhance the vulnerability of our transport industry. See, right now, if our transport sector is vulnerable because of our dependency on oil and gas, tomorrow we'll be vulnerable with regard to supply of batteries and supply of critical minerals required for your batteries. So there's no point in shifting from one vulnerability to another vulnerability. At least with regard to oil, gas, we can easily diversify. We have multiple sources from where we can procure. But that is not the case with battery technology and critical strategic minerals, because China has a very dominant position, almost a monopoly-like position over here. So then how does it make sense for India to transition to EVs? Right? That is what we need to discuss. How can India overcome this new strategic vulnerability? Or else adopting EVs make no sense for India. We need to boost domestic battery design and production. We need to secure access to critical strategic minerals and move away from China dependency. So let's see what is the current status with the industry and how can we do this in the coming years. Now, when you look at the current batteries being procured for electric vehicles in our country, if you look at the mass segment, where cheaper vehicles are focused upon the lower end of the value chain, be it auto rickshaws, three-wheelers or two-wheelers, or small-end cars or low-end cars, they primarily rely on cheaper Chinese batteries. But if you look at high-end automobiles, high-end cars especially, those which are produced in India, sold in India, they mainly rely on European batteries. Now, both dependencies are a problem. European batteries tend to be expensive, though superior in technology. Though reliable and superior in technology, it is expensive. So what will happen? The Indian automobile manufacturer will procure the high-end European batteries and they will pass down the cost to the customer. which means common people can never afford these high-end EVs. It will only cater to an elite section, to the ultra-rich section. This will not solve our problem. Procuring high-end batteries, which are more expensive but better in technology from Europe, is not going to help us transition to the EV segment. And right now, the cheaper batteries coming in from China, they are catering primarily to the mass segment. And that will create a big vulnerability and a big challenge. So, what India needs to do is to prioritize a China plus one sourcing strategy. We will have to depend on China to some extent, at least for some years. But parallelly, we should look at other sources and we should build up our domestic capabilities as well. So it requires a two-pronged approach. While we continue to procure from China the cheaper batteries and critical minerals that are necessary, we have to take two steps parallelly. One, we have to look at other cheaper sourcing options. South Korea can be one such option, for example. Then, parallelly, we have to step up and build our domestic capabilities. This is the only way forward for India, or else we should forget about EV transition. So, if India has to move away and achieve that level of independence, we have to adopt this path. But there is one easier way forward as well. We should experiment with various chemistries for batteries. It's not a hard and fast rule that only lithium ion batteries are required for powering electric vehicles. There are different emerging chemistries as well, such as sodium ion batteries. Right now, it is not a full substitute for lithium ion batteries. Right now, sodium ion batteries are not fully tested. It's not a very robust technology as such. It's not a proven technology, unlike lithium ion batteries. But there is a possibility to try out different chemistries, different compositions and combinations, so that we can keep our dependency on lithium as low as possible. And this requires support for OEMs. The government will have to provide more policy support, incentives, and even technical support for the equipment manufacturers to invest in emerging chemistries, to try out different battery combinations, so that we can reduce dependency on critical strategic minerals. And sodium ion battery can be one such solution. It has to be tested by India's battery and automobile industry. So, on this note, we bring this topic to an end. Please take up this practice question based on what we have discussed. The topic can be very important for environment ecology and as well as for Indian economy under GS paper 3. Now let's look at another article, a column on page number 8, relevant for international relations and internal security. The article is written by a top expert on India-China relations, Ashok K. Kanta, a retired IFS officer, the former Indian ambassador to China, which means this article carries a lot of weight. It carries a lot of value in terms of understanding the India-China border dispute. The writer is expressing a serious concern about China's recent approach to resolve a part of India-China border dispute. The writer is worried that India might fall under China's pressure and we might succumb to the temptation of short-term gains for political reasons and compromise our long-term national interests. So what's happening here? Why the writer is so alarmed about the ongoing boundary talks between India and China? Let's examine this in slight detail. See, for many years, China is pushing the idea that to resolve the boundary issue along the Himalayan border, we need not address the entire stretch of the border in one go. China is suggesting, let's break it up into different sectors. Let's go one by one. Let's resolve the easier option first, and then we will try to resolve the more complex issues, probably Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh. So China's idea is, let's pick up Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh later. But the low-hanging fruits like Sikkim and the other stretches, that can be resolved easily according to China. And China is pushing India to do this. And though India has resisted this in the past, we have firmly declined this option in the past. Right now, there are some signs emerging in the last 1 year that the Modi government might be willing to accept some changes that China is pushing for. And that's why the writer based on his incredible experience, is warning the Indian government not to fall for this temptation. It might seem very tempting to achieve some short term goal to resolve a part of the border dispute and claim it as a big diplomatic and political victory. It might be good for domestic audience, but if India succumbs to this Chinese tactic, India will pay a long term price. Our national interest, security interest could be adversely compromised if India agrees for a piecemeal approach on the boundary solution. So let's dive a little deep into the topic now. Let's understand this with the help of a map. Now, when you look at the India China border, the entire stretch is disputed, right? There is no clear demarcation that exists as of today. Now, this border is generally divided into three sectors, three main sectors, and one minor sector. Which are these three sectors? First, we have the western sector of the border in the Ladakh region, where we have the temporary de facto border, the line of actual control. Though the entire stretch of the border is also equated or referred to as the LAC, it primarily refers to the temporary de facto border in Ladakh, where China has illegally occupied Aksai Chin from India. So India claims Aksai Chin as a part of its integral territory, and we have a temporary de facto border over here. This is the western sector of the border, the Ladakh sector. Then you have the middle sector of the border, covering the borders with states such as Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, where multiple disputes exist. There's no clear demarcation here as well, and regular incursions keep taking place. And please note, we share a strategic tri-junction point over here with Nepal and China. This is at the strategic Lipu Lake Pass, where India and Nepal already have a standing border dispute over the Kala Pani region. Then we have the eastern sector of the border, covering primarily the Arunachal Pradesh sector, where we have the Mahon line, which China refuses to accept, as it was drawn by the British back in 1914 with Tibetan representatives, and neither India or China were party to it. So modern China, that is PRC, rejects the Mahon line and doesn't accept this as the boundary. And it even deliberately refers to Arunachal Pradesh as South Tibet in order to instigate India and provoke India. It does not recognize Arunachal Pradesh as part of Indian sovereignty. Now, generally, Sikkim, the border across Sikkim and Tibet, is also considered as part of eastern sector. But as far as the boundary talks which are going on, Sikkim is separately identified. It is separately identified as one of the minor sectors which is easier to resolve, easier to achieve a solution. Compared to the more complex dispute along the Arunachal border and Ladakh border, the dispute that we have, or the lack of demarcation we have along the Sikkim-Tibet border, is considered as a low-hanging fruit. Meaning, with some concessions from both sides, this issue here can be easily resolved and we can have a permanent international border over here. Now, this is an understanding that we have since 1975, since Sikkim integrated into the Indian Union. So over the last 20-30 years, China has been trying to use this tactic against India. Instead of talking about all the boundary issues at once and finding a package solution, China is trying to adopt a piecemeal approach, like breaking it into different components, and it's pushing India to first talk just about Sikkim so that this issue can be easily resolved. Now, this might look tempting from a political and diplomatic standpoint, right? Because the government can claim victory. It can project this to the domestic audience as a big diplomatic win. But however, such a short-term approach might compromise our long-term national interests, because China is known to adopt this strategy, often referred to as salami slicing strategy. China is a master in salami slicing, where it adopts a piecemeal incremental approach to slowly make territorial gains. China does not hit your country in one go. This has been China's long-held military doctrine, right? It traces back to Mao Zedong himself, the founder of modern PRC. Under the salami slicing technique, just like you slice a salami cut by cut, China is known to adopt an incremental approach in its boundary issues with all the neighbors. It has done it with Russia, Mongolia, with Vietnam, with all the neighbors, right? And it has been doing this with India as well and Bhutan as well. So China tries to divide the sectors, and it makes these incremental incursions, occupy some part of the territory as well, and then tries to achieve a status quo for some time. It basically buys some time for negotiations as a time buying tactic, strengthens its military position, and then makes further incursions. This is a classic Chinese strategy which we have seen from many, many years. That's why in the past, whenever China made the proposal over Sikkim border, we have rejected the idea that we will not agree for these mini deals. We don't want to bifurcate the border into different parts and have a separate deal for each of them. We want a holistic negotiation from Ladakh till Arunachal Pradesh and resolve this as one package. But the concerning sign is coming from recent developments. In 2024, I'm sure you must know that we have covered this in our classes as well, that India China finally normalized the relationship at the Kazan BRICS summit, where both countries formally ended the Ladakh military standoff. The Ladakh standoff, which lasted for nearly 4 years, where heightened tensions were present, it was finally resolved, and both sides they disengaged and de-escalated, and normal patrolling also resumed in Ladakh, and some buffer zones were also created to avoid any clashes and confusion, to avoid one patrol unit running into the other's patrol unit. So with this, we have seen a slight improvement happening in India-China relationship in the past 1 year. PM Modi visited China as well for the SEO summit last year at Tianjin. With Trump coming into office, both India and China now have a common threat in the form of an unpredictable US, especially in the economic domain. With regard to American tariffs and trade wars, India and China are seen to be collaborating to work together. So India-China relations have started improving on one side. The political diplomatic ties have improved. Economic ties are picking up. The ban India had placed on Chinese investments in the country has been lifted. India is easing the restrictions on Chinese imports as well. So politically, diplomatically, economically, the relationship is improving. Then, with regard to the boundary issue, last year, the 24th round of special representative talks were held between the two special representatives. Now, what is this SR mechanism or the SR talks? The special representative mechanism dates back to 2003 when it was established, and in 2005, the political parameters to settle the boundary issue was established under the SR mechanism. The credit goes to the Vajpayee government and the Manmohan Singh government for championing a new approach with China to resolve the boundary issue and find a peaceful negotiated solution. Under the SR mechanism, the special representative mechanism, both countries appoint a special representative, an envoy. From India, it is the National Security Advisor. From China, it is the foreign minister, the state counselor. So these two special representatives meet to discuss the boundary issue and find a political settlement, a political solution based on the political parameters identified in 2005 to permanently resolve the boundary dispute altogether. Until 2009, multiple rounds of SR talks were taking place because India-China relationships was pretty good. But post 2010, China became very hostile towards India as a reaction to India's growing relations with United States. As India got closer to US, Japan, and Australia and appeared to form an alliance against China, China got more and more aggressive against India. So since 2010, SR talks had completely broken down. It was resumed during the Galwan River Valley clashes in 2020. For almost a decade, it had been stopped. And during Galwan clashes, SR talks were resumed. And after the Kazan BRICS summit, where the final resolution of the Ladakh standoff was achieved, the 24th round of SR talks was held, where India's NSA Ajit Doval met with China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi. So last year in August 2025, they issued a statement agreeing that both sides have set up an expert group to explore an early harvest deal for boundary delimitation in India-China border areas. Now, what does this mean? What do you mean by early harvest? Early harvest in diplomatic negotiations basically refers to a low hanging fruit which can be plucked immediately for immediate gains. It's like, let's say you have a mango tree, right? There are 200 fruits, all of them are unripe. Maybe one fruit has started ripening. So you get tempted and you pluck that fruit because it is easy to pluck it right now, right? It's an easy, immediate gain for you. So in diplomatic negotiations, something similar happens. Let's say, for example, with US, India, US, we are trying to negotiate a trade deal. But since the trade negotiations for a free trade agreement is very complex, we are trying to work out a early harvest trade deal, like a mini trade deal, which is easily achievable as of now. We have done something similar with Australia as well. The India-Australia FTA is not a full-fledged FTA that we have because the negotiations are more complex. It will take more time. So in 2022, we achieved an early harvest deal with Australia, like a mini FTA, so that it can immediately apply and there can be immediate results, right? So it's like you guys following a crash course instead of putting in the hard effort to study the whole subject, buying some crash course and trying to cover a subject at the last minute, right? That gives you some immediate gain, at least some immediate satisfaction that you covered it. So something similar happens in diplomacy as well. Since India-China boundary issue is very complex, it's very hard to resolve it in few months or few years. China has been pushing for an early harvest deal, especially on the Sikkim sector. China's argument is, since other sections are more difficult to negotiate right now, let's achieve a resolution at Sikkim at least. It seems well intentioned, right? It appears that though China has a good intention, but the writer, based on his years of experience of dealing with China, is warning New Delhi to be very, very cautious about this Chinese proposal because there is a certain process which had to be followed for resolving the boundary issue. Now, recently, the 35th meeting of the working mechanism for consultation and coordination on India-China border affairs took place. We covered this a few days back in our Hindu analysis as well. Senior Indian diplomats met with Chinese diplomats in Beijing and they brought out a statement. In this statement as well, they are referring to a delimitation mechanism which they have planned, and substantial preparation is being made for the 25th round of SR talks, which might happen very soon. See, it is a very good positive sign that SR talks have been resumed. It happened last year as well, and this year we are pushing for the 25th round of SR talks, and this is a good sign. But the problem is in the last year's statement. After the SR talks of the 24th round, the statement said that India is agreeing with China to demarcate a part of the border through an early harvest deal instead of delimitation of the border. Now, what's the big difference? What is demarcation? What is delimitation? To understand this, you first have to look at the Special Representatives Agreement on Political Parameters and Guiding Principles, signed in 2005 by the then Manmohan Singh government. Under the political parameters, there are specific steps, 3 steps that are identified as to how the boundary issue has to be resolved and finalized. Step number 1, you first bring out a set of political parameters which are mutually acceptable. Because see, in such a complex boundary issue, you can't get too technical, you can't get too legal about it, because then you will never find a common ground and neither side will agree to a deal. So you have to find a compromise which is acceptable to both, which does not compromise the core interests of both sides. That is when a deal will work, right? It should be a fair compromise. At the same time, it should ensure that core interests of both sides are not compromised. So identifying the political parameters is the first step, which India and China are currently doing through SR talks. Once the parameters are done, you create a framework for a final settlement. You bring out a broad agreement that this is how we are going to resolve the boundary issue, and then you delineate the border, meaning you draw the imaginary line on a map. This is the process of delineation. Using the latest mapping technologies, you will delineate the border on a map and agree that whether it's acceptable to both sides. Only after these steps are done, you will take up the final step, which is a physical step, the step of demarcation, where you actually put up physical markers on the ground to identify the border. You place these marker stones, or you fence the border. You place clear markers on the ground, physical markers, which is the last step, that is demarcation. But right now, China is trying to invert this process, turn it completely around. And it appears that India is willing to agree to this. Because during last year's SR talks, when they agreed to set up an expert group on early harvest deal to achieve a mini border resolution, which looks like with regard to the Sikkim border, India has agreed to first take up demarcation instead of delineation. Now, without delineating the boundary, how will you demarcate the boundary? Demarcation is the last step. After the political parameters are finalized, a framework agreement is worked out, then you delineate the boundary on a map, then you take up demarcation. But if India is agreeing to this, this could be a dangerous pitfall. Right? In the short term, it appears attractive. Right? The government can project this as a big victory, something which no government has ever achieved. It can appeal to the domestic audience. But China could leverage this to its advantage in the coming decades. Because see, right now, I want you to understand the topography and the strategic nature of the Sikkim border. The Sikkim border is one of the easiest issue to resolve as of now. And India actually has a geostrategic advantage as of today. Compared to Ladakh, compared to Arunachal Pradesh, we are in a slightly better position as far as the Sikkim boundary is concerned. See, we have strategic Himalayan passes here like Nathula and the other key Himalayan passes that link Sikkim with Tibet, right? Now, for China, extending its reach into Chumbi Valley, furthering its military presence in the strategic Chumbi Valley is a priority. Chumbi Valley is this V-shaped region that lies between China, India, and Tibet. So there is a tri-junction point here. And near the tri-junction point, especially near the Nathula Pass of India, you have a disputed region called Doklam, which is a border dispute between China and Bhutan. This is the issue which had flared up in 2017 that led to a India-China military standoff, where China was illegally constructing a road and military installations near Doklam in Bhutanese territory, and India objected to it, as India is obligated to defend Bhutan against external threats as part of our 1949 treaty. And this led to a India-China military standoff and escalated very quickly. Now, why is this Doklam region so sensitive? Now, if you look at the 1890 Great Britain-China Convention, through which the boundaries between Sikkim, Bhutan, and Tibet was drawn, there are specific locations that are identified as the boundary line. Now, China is pushing for the Mount Gipmochi Ridge, which will give it an advantageous position to maintain oversight over the strategic Siliguri corridor. China is pushing for a position over here at the tri-junction point, which will further deepen the Chumbi Valley into Indian and Bhutanese territory. And that will give China direct oversight, a vantage point to monitor and even possibly access the Siliguri corridor, which is a choke point for India, the chicken's neck of India, which is the only vital land corridor linking Northeast India with the rest of the country. That is why Indian Army was so aggressive in 2017. When China violated Bhutanese territory at Doklam, India objected very strongly and risked a potential war, because losing this area is non-negotiable for India. Giving that opening to China near Doklam and Nathula is non-negotiable, as it will compromise your weakest point at Siliguri. So traditionally, we have maintained this position that we will maintain a position slightly north, which is roughly 6.5 kilometers away from what China is proposing. So there is a different interpretation here at the tri-junction point. Now, the problem is, if we agree to a mini deal with China, settle the boundary now, please remember, China-Bhutan border dispute is still not settled. Bhutan does not even have diplomatic relations with China, but they do have boundary talks going on. Even they have held almost 24, 25 rounds of boundary talks. And There was a time when India was guiding Bhutan in its foreign policy until 2007. But right now, Bhutan runs its foreign policy independently. And China, Bhutan are in an advanced stage of finalizing their boundary dispute. There are three locations along the Himalayan stretch where China, Bhutan have a dispute: at Doklam, at Jakarlung, and Pasamlung. Now, what if India agrees to a deal first with Sikkim and China manages to pressurize India, seek some concessions here, and gets a slightly advantageous position closer to Doklam? Then later on, it strikes a deal with Bhutan separately, where it will give up Jakarlung and Pasamlung. China is not interested in that. This is located in the northern Bhutanese border. What if China proposes a trade-off? Right? A small country like Bhutan will not be able to resist that. China will say, you give Doklam to us, you keep Jakarlung and Pasamlung. And Bhutan would be tempted to accept that. Right? Bhutan would never have the courage to stand up and oppose China openly. And that would be the biggest risk. If China were to gain control over Doklam, and if we have already made a small compromise along the Sikkim border, then China gets a direct opening towards Siliguri corridor, as well as towards Nathula Pass. And this strategic vulnerability cannot be allowed. That is why the Indian former ambassador has written this strong article. Generally, you don't see such articles coming from the former diplomats, where they are critical of the current government's approach. So it's a very clear warning to India from the former ambassador that we should not commit to any mini agreements or early harvest deals. Because today, if we make a small compromise in Sikkim and claim it as a big victory, right, it might good look for the media. It might look good for our domestic audience. But tomorrow, when China settles with Bhutan, if it gets Doklam and gives away other areas to entice Bhutan, then we will be in a very precarious position. Then China will push further with Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. You have seen how aggressive China is already with regard to Arunachal Pradesh. It keeps referring to Arunachal Pradesh as Zangnan or South Tibet. It has stepped up the militarization along the McMahon line. Same with Aksai Chin as well. China has carried out massive military fortification, advanced forward deployment. It has stepped up military grade infrastructure. It is renaming several places and villages near the border areas and building these Xiokang border defense villages and bringing a population here as well to settle them, to strengthen its claims against India. Then today, if we compromise on Sikkim independently or separately, then tomorrow our negotiations with Arunachal Pradesh or Ladakh will be further weakened. China will have an advantageous position. China already has a certain leverage, be it with regard to the McMahon line or with regard to Aksai Chin, right? Sikkim is the only stretch where we are in a slightly advantageous position. So if we compromise that today for short-term gains, and tomorrow if China strikes a deal with Bhutan and takes Doklam, then that would be a strategic nightmare for India. So that is the warning the writer is providing. So I hope the topic is clearly understood. Now let's move towards the smaller articles and let's quickly cover the remaining small topics. On page 4, there is a small update on India-Nepal relations. Nepal's new Prime Minister, Balendra Shah, has been making controversial statements one after the other. We discussed the other day how he mentioned that even Nepal has encroached on Indian territory, that it's not just India which has taken Kala Pani and Sosta, even Nepal has encroached on Indian territory. That itself was a controversial claim, and we broke the myth. I explained how this is not exactly encroachment, it is just a complexity that lies along the border area. Now, today he has again made another controversial statement. Nepal's PM has said that UK or China, they can act as third-party mediators to resolve the India-Nepal border issue. India-Nepal have a couple of boundary issues at Kala Pani and Susta. But India has strongly rejected these claims of Balendra Shah because we don't encourage, tolerate any kind of third-party involvement in our boundary negotiations, be it with any country. We have the same position with Pakistan as well over Kashmir issue. We have the same position over the China border as well. The same position with Nepal's border as well. So Nepal's PM suggesting that UK or China could be acting as mediators to help India-Nepal resolve it is indeed another controversial provocation. India has strongly rejected the idea, stating that this is a bilateral issue. It will be resolved only between India and Nepal. Probably Balendra Shah has no wrong intention as such, maybe, but probably it shows his political and diplomatic immaturity. Right? He's new to politics and probably doesn't understand or grasp the nuances of foreign policy making and the sensitivity attached to India-Nepal relations. The Nepali encroachment he has been referring to is not actually encroachment. In the no man's land, that is right at the border, where a 150-yard distance is maintained on both sides, or 150-meter gap is maintained on both sides as a buffer zone, there will be certain Nepali farmers and villagers who might have encroached into the no man's land. Similar encroachments would be there from Indian villagers as well, right? Plus, the Gandak River near Susta in Bihar, it has changed course, and the shifting nature of the Himalayan rivers has created some claims and counterclaims. That is what Balendra Shah is referring to, but probably is not articulating it properly, right? These are not Nepali encroachments of Indian land. These are the complexities which are inherent to a difficult border like India-Nepal border. So this is what we are trying to resolve. We are trying to map out all these cross-border occupations and the shifting nature of the Gandak River, and we are trying to find a negotiated settlement. But India has made it clear that there will be no third-party involvement. This is purely a bilateral issue. And parallelly, India has received the chief of Rashtriya Swatantra Party, which has won the elections and formed the government in Nepal after the Gen Z protests. And this was not a formal invitation from the government. This was a political invitation by the ruling BJP in India. It has reached out to the ruling party in Nepal, and the political ties are being cultivated between the two ruling political establishments. Now, coming to the prelim section, let's take a quick look. The DRDO has successfully conducted a flight trial of RudraM-II missile. As you know, in prelims, UPSC is prioritizing security and defense related topics, especially weapon systems that are in news. So what is RudraM-II or RudraM-II? RudraM-II is essentially a air-to-surface missile fired from a fighter jet used for suppressing enemy air defenses. It was tested at the integrated test range in Chandipur off the coast of Odisha in Bay of Bengal. And RudraM is an indigenously developed solid propelled air to surface missile. It's primarily mounted on a Sukhoi 30 MKI, and it is used to suppress enemy air defenses for SEAD missions. Suppressing enemy air defense is the first step in any conflict. You open your conflict with this by targeting enemy air defense systems and radar networks. So that's why RudraM can be very effective. It is known for advanced navigation and very precision accuracy targeting. So now all the flight trials have been cleared and the stage is being set for its induction into the Indian Air Force. So as you can see, the facts and the key points we are discussing, some of it are being sourced from PIB as well to give you a holistic mixture of Hindu analysis and PIB coverage. Next, on page 14, there are two important tiger reserves that are in news: the Simplipal Tiger Reserve and Satkosia Tiger Reserve. The development is not relevant. A recently introduced tiger has given birth to 4 new cubs, but we should focus on the tiger reserves that are in news. Simplipal Tiger Reserve is located in Mayurbhanj district of Odisha. And it's not just a tiger reserve, it's a national park, it's a biosphere reserve, a wildlife sanctuary, and a key elephant reserve as well. It's one of the most important protected areas in Odisha. It has the highest tiger population in Odisha and the only tiger reserve in the entire country which has melanistic tigers. Right? The black tigers that you might have seen in images, the black striped tigers, which largely miss the yellow color, right? The yellow stripes. They are the melanistic tigers and they are found only in Simplipal. So this is a key habitat. So please make a note of the flora and fauna that is found over here. It is also home to several indigenous tribes and communities, including the Santals, Gond, and other tribal communities. And it has a very rich ecological heritage and cultural heritage. There are famous tourist locations as well here, such as the Barepani and Joranda waterfalls. And the vegetation type is moist mixed deciduous. So these basic facts can be relevant for a prelims question, right? Now, can you do the same for Satkosia Tiger Reserve? Follow the same template, identify the location, the kind of species distributed over there, the vegetation, any unique geographical features, cultural features of that protected area. Please find this out and mention that in the comments so it can help other students as well. So this is a small homework for all of you. Read about Satkosia Tiger Reserve and mention the key points in the comments. Next, there is a Science and Tech article on page 14 that refers to Mega Science Vision 2035. What is this Mega Science Vision MSV 2035? The article again per se is not too important, but this topic of MSV, Mega Science Vision, is very relevant. So here we'll take the help of PIB and the official website of the Department of Science and Technology. According to the government, the Mega Science Vision 2035, it is an initiative launched by the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. The Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India has launched this initiative to focus on 6 priority areas. It essentially is tasked with creating a roadmap for launching mega science projects in key emerging areas of scientific research. It includes 6 areas, that is high energy physics, nuclear physics, astronomy and astrophysics, accelerator science technology applications, climate research and ecology, and environmental science. So please remember the 6 domains under which mega science projects are being conceptualized by the Department of Science and Technology. So to suggest the path towards establishing these mega science projects, the Mega Science Vision was set up. It is mainly led by Indian Institute of Science and launched by the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. Now, according to one report on India's climate research capabilities, the report has warned that we import a lot of our scientific equipment and they're not well calibrated, they're not perfectly suited for research, and this is impeding our understanding of climate science. The report is urging the Indian government to invest in domestic indigenous science, technology, and equipment. Right now, much of the research equipment we use, they are imported from abroad, which hampers our scientific research and advancement. So that is what the article is referring to. But from examination point of view, the Mega Science Vision 2035 is what is important. Coming to the last article from the Hindu, Bangladesh and its foreign minister has been elected as the president of UN General Assembly. So that is the update for you. So what is the role of the president of UNGA? How is the president elected? That can be very, very important for prelims under international relations. See, the UN General Assembly is one of the primary organs of the UN, right? It has universal representation with 193 member states being represented along with several observers. So to conduct the proceedings of the General Assembly, you need a president who will preside over the sittings of the UN General Assembly, right? Who will facilitate the debates and the voting process on various resolutions adopted by UN General Assembly. So this is a pivotal role performed by the president of the UNGA. Now this president is elected every year. The term is from September to September. September is when the UNGA summit takes place. Right before that, a new president is elected who will serve a 1-year term. These presidents are elected from different geographical zones on rotational basis to ensure equitable geographical representation. So for 1 year, it would be from an African nation. Another year, it would be from an Asia Pacific country. Then it would be from Eastern Europe, then from Latin America and Caribbean, then from Western Europe and other states. So for the next term that starts September 2026, the turn was for Asia Pacific region and Bangladesh foreign minister has been elected. So all the members of UNGA, they will cast the vote. All the members will cast the vote. The 193 members of UNGA, they will elect the next president, right? And please remember, there are few countries which have held the position twice. Bangladesh is holding it for the second time. Now, can you find out if India has ever held this particular position? Have we ever had an Indian president of UN General Assembly? Tell me in the comments below. But I'll give you a hint. Major powers have deliberately not contested this position. They don't even stand for the election. They want this to be given to smaller countries and weaker powers. So they have a greater global visibility at the UN. So P5 countries, for example, or major middle powers, they never take up this position. They don't even contest the election, right? They take a back step so other small countries can contest and get this seat so that they can push the voice of the global south. So that's a small hint. So tell me whether India has ever held the president of UNGA's position. Now, coming to the PIB articles, which I promised. We've already integrated PIB in some of the previous Hindu articles we discussed. Now we will look at some specific PIB articles and we'll end the session. The government is rolling out a new WPI index with a new base year, and very soon it will be replaced with a new purchaser or producer price index or PPI. PPI is very soon going to be the new inflation indicator at wholesale level. Though WPI will continue for at least 5 more years, eventually it will be phased out. But what you need to understand is that wholesale price index, which was previously measured with 2011-12 as the base year, it is now being updated to 2022-23. This is in line with all other changes that have been done for GDP, CPI measurement, and IIP measurement. The base year for all of them, the methodology as well, and the covered sectors and products have all been upgraded and expanded to give a better reflection of the economic developments happening in the country. So similarly, wholesale price index WPI, which was based on 2011-12, is now being upgraded to 2022-23. And in another few days, by June 15th, the government will be rolling out a new methodology, a new measurement, a new index called the PPI, Producer Price Index, which will be the replacement for WPI. Because PPI is considered as the global standard, even by IMF. Even IMF recommends countries to adopt producer price index as it gives a more realistic and better estimate of wholesale level inflation. So India will continue providing WPI based on the new base year for 5 more years. Then parallelly, PPI will also be published. So the Office of Economic Advisor of the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade will keep bringing out both the indices for some years, for 5 years at least. So WPI will also be published, PPI will also be published. Eventually, WPI will be completely phased out and producer price index will be the new index for wholesale inflation. Along with this, the Technical Advisory Committee on Statistics of Price and Cost of Living, it has recommended the rollout of newer indices, a new series of output producer and trial input producer price, along with service producer price index covering 7 services is also being rolled out. See, this aligns our key economic indicators and data pointers with global standards. If you look at IMF and World Bank, they recommend these indices to have updated base years and updated methodology covering all new emerging sectors and products as well. So now India is rolling out the most advanced and the most accurate indices that gives a more realistic picture of the growth in the country. So under the new producer price index that will be launched on June 15th, renewable energy sector is also being included. So these are the key changes you will get to see from WPI to PPI. One, of course, WPI's base year also has been changed. PPI will also be based on the new base year, 2022-23, right? Then the number of products that are covered has increased from 697 to 957. New sectors like renewable energy sector under electricity has been added. And overall better methodology and computational metrics has been introduced to provide more accurate estimates of wholesale inflation. Next, another important article, a very high chance of a prelims question being asked on this topic, Mission Senejori for Assam's Muga silk development. As you know, Assam's Muga silk is globally renowned. It was India's first silk variant to get the GI tag, and also it's the world's only naturally golden silk. Right? It has a natural golden color, and it's the only such silk fabric in the world which is naturally golden in color. So there is a lot of global appeal for Muga silk, right? And it's primarily produced in Assam. That's why there is a GI tag as well. So the Department of Development of Northeast region has launched this initiative to promote the Muga silk as a global luxury brand, to appeal to Western markets, to European, American markets primarily, right? Because there's a huge demand for the fine golden silk of Muga. So this will be a cluster-based initiative where the Ministry of Development of Northeast region will collaborate with other stakeholders like State Government of Assam, Central Silk Board, Ministry of Textiles, and they will provide the right support and facilities for the farmers across the entire production and supply chain of Muga silk, right from farming the mulberry plant to rearing of silkworms to extraction of the fibers to making of the garments and the fabrics. The entire supply chain will be interlinked, and a cluster based model where different regions like Jorhat, Sivsagar, Tinsukia, and others, they will be designated for each step of this supply chain. So this is Mission Senejori, to promote Muga silk and provide the support for the farmers to produce high quality Muga silk fabrics, which can have a global appeal and push it towards the global market, towards high end Western markets. So on this note, I bring the analysis to an end. I hope it's been a useful, interesting session. And if you're liking the integration of PIB, do let us know, do support us with your likes and comments. So that is it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.